Oh, hello, caregiver. It's good to see you today, and I hope you're doing well during this time of isolation and quarantine. I know it's a really hard time, and uh, many of us are going into this third week of stay safer at home or stay in place, and it's getting a bit rough. I can feel even my own emotional capabilities and my own resilience waning under this time of quarantine. But you caught me in the middle of one of the spiritual practices that I try to do regularly in order to get out of my head and in order to get my prayers on paper, in order to think differently and get a new perspective, and that is of journaling. During this time of the virus, it's so important to dig deep and to reaffirm the spiritual disciplines that we have in order to draw from and draw energy and power, and in order to tap into the Holy Spirit, to remember who we are and whose we are. And one of the spiritual disciplines we want to encourage you here at Tapestry of Love is that of journaling. You don't have to be a good writer or even a decent writer to keep a journal. A journal is intended for you and you alone, and maybe between you and God if you write your prayers out. You don't have to make sure you get all the grammar right. You don't need to make sure your penmanship is beautiful. You don't need to be a calligraphy artist in order to jot down those things that you might need to talk about. But a journal is there to just, again, get all of the thoughts and the things that are in your brain out of your head and onto paper in order to bring clarity, to gain perspective, and in order to just do a mental flush, if you will. Journaling has been around for a long time. You think about the Psalms in the Old Testament, perhaps the earliest journal of Israel in our own faith tradition, in which the Psalter, the authors of the Psalms, wrote their prayers and songs, their laments and their praises, their songs and prayers of thanksgiving, as well as intercessory prayers, and even what we call imprecatory prayers, which is prayer against calling for God's judgment against enemies and against those who have opposed or oppressed or have caused injustice in the world. So they are, on the one hand, honest prayers. And one of the things about keeping a journal is because no one is going to read it, be honest. Be honest to yourself. Be honest with God. And you can write whatever you want. I'm sure when you come before the Lord in that great getting up morning, the Lord isn't going to hold you accountable to the prayers and to the journal entries that you write, because those are probably the most honest things we can keep in our life, that are private, that are intended to assuage and to bring healing, assuage our fears and intended to bring healing. If you write something in your journal that might be filled with anger or disgust, you are to write them and let them go, not to act out on them. So it's one thing to write in your journal with all honesty and avoid being held accountable for all of the junk that's in your head. It's another thing to write it and then to act on it, because then you will be held accountable. So, but the discipline of journaling, again, doesn't need to be long. You don't need to spend a long time on it each day. Just maybe a few minutes, even if it's just 3 or 4 minutes when you get a chance. We know that caregiving takes a lot of time, and that because you provide care for your loved ones, that you don't have a lot of time during the day to sneak away and to do something. But even if you keep a little notebook by your bedstand and just jot down sentences, words, thoughts, prayer requests, perhaps names of people that you want to either reach out to or pray for, maybe even keep a list of heroes. One of mine is Martin Luther King Jr. And sometimes I'll just think of Martin Luther King Jr. as I'm coming to the end of my day and I close my eyes and I'm praying and I think of MLK and what he means to me. Something will come to mind of something he said or wrote. And it's not a bad idea to just jot down a name and a saying, or just a thought, like if you're missing your loved ones during this time of hardship, just write down their name and say, I miss you. You can write anything in your journal. It doesn't have to be fancy. I usually go for the very moleskin, which you can actually pick up either a moleskin brand journal or something that looks like a moleskin, but anything will do. You can use that. You can use a yellow legal pad. You can get one of these little writing tablets at CVS, so you don't have to get fancy with your journal. You just need somewhere where you can keep just those thoughts that'll be confidential, and uh, just sneak away a few minutes of the Lord in order to write those thoughts out, those prayers, those musings, those little insights and inspiration. I even know, uh, reading about stand-up comedians and their craft of how they do their work, it's not uncommon for them to keep a notepad or a little uh, steno notebook around in which they just write jokes, you know. So there are all kinds of things to in order to fashion your craft, your spiritual discipline of journaling. So as you go out this week, caregiver, remember that you're not alone. We're praying for you. If you need anything, just reach out to us. And in all things, keep your head up, hang in there, and continue to allow hope to dictate your day and define your day. Thank you.